Hello and welcome to game number 10 in the best of 15 series between ThomasHiatt and ZLO. I apologize for the massive delay in bringing this cast to you. To bring you back up to speed, ZLO is up 6-3 against ThomasHiatt, getting 5 wins in a row from game 1 to game 5. Now ThomasHiatt fighting back, hoping to even the score, though he does have quite the mountain ahead of him. He will have to win this game and the next, and a few more after that to have any chance against ZLO. While ZLO only has to win 2 more games. ZLO needing 8 games to win the best of 15. Thomas will need 5 more games. 5 more wins, to be precise. Now, unfortunately, since I'm making this cast so late in the game, some patches have been released since then, and the releases seem to have broken my UI. So when I went back to these old games, the whatever mechanism behind loading the UI seems to not be in place for this old patch, so I don't know how else to describe it, really. I don't know if my explanation just made sense or not, but either way, UI is not showing up, so we'll have to make this cast without the fancy details. So before I jabber on any further, let's get into the builds of the respective players. ZLO on the bottom left side with green Cybrid, going second air, and third Naval Factory. He took a chunk of this Tech 3 Naval Factory, as you can see. ThomasHiatt working on that on his end. On the top right is ThomasHiatt with gray Cybrid. He built 2 land factories before starting his air factory here. And this shows his intent to build lots and lots of engineers at the starting location. So Thomas does have more engineers than ZLO at the moment. However, with the lack of air, ZLO has, with ThomasHiatt's lack of air, ZLO has an opening to even the engineer count. Down goes 1 engineer, and ThomasHiatt almost finished with his, looks like an interceptor, which he sorely needs right now, as ZLO's Zeus hovers over Thomas's base unopposed. Here comes ZLO with another pass. Takes out 2 engineers. Ouch. Now that stings. And he lets off another carpet of cluster bombs before finally being shot down by Thomas's defenses. So I counted 4 engineer kills. Which should be pleasing to ZLO, who is now working on his 4th naval factory. ThomasHiatt working on his 3rd. So we can already see there's that ZLO is ahead of Navy. A number of naval factories, a good predictor of how well the players will do in frigate count. And on white fire, you definitely want to rush frigates most of the time. I'm sure there are exceptions, but the vast majority of the time, more frigates, more chance of winning, especially with the close distances to the opponent's base. That said, ThomasHiatt, with his somewhat slower naval production, does reach ZLO's base first with his frigate. Now that doesn't really mean much for ThomasHiatt besides the fact that he can kind of see what's going on ZLO's side. This frigate will not be able to do any damage as ZLO is rebuffing this advance with his own frigate. ZLO with the edge in the air, taking out another of ThomasHiatt's interceptors. ThomasHiatt with only 2 remaining now, and ZLO, feeling the vulnerability, moves in with his interceptors, hovers around the island of ThomasHiatt, almost in an act of disrespect. ThomasHiatt not having the interceptors to oppose this group. ZLO can freely travel around the map as he pleases with his interceptors, and it appears that that applies to his navy as well. ZLO sending his frigates over to ThomasHiatt's side with little fear of repose, reprise. Now, Thomas, we can see, started his Tech 2 mixes very early, and at this point we do question whether that was the appropriate choice, seeing as how that allowed ZLO to ramp up naval production. Excuse me, it didn't allow ZLO to ramp up naval production so much as it allowed ZLO to walk into ThomasHiatt's base. ZLO's naval production, of course, would have happened either way, but with ThomasHiatt upgrading his mixes rather than building a navy, ZLO is now able to advance with his navy as he pleases. Now, while ZLO is a little bit late in expanding to the bottom right side, we can see that in terms of raw power, ZLO has the edge. ThomasHiatt does need a little bit more time before he can catch up to the army strength of ZLO. Now, ThomasHiatt is working on the second Tech 3 naval factory on his side. His objective right now should be to build more naval factories, which he's not doing really, but well, the reason he should be building more naval factories, or at least building a Tech 2 air factory, is because he needs some way to match ZLO's navy here. He simply can't keep up with the production right now. ZLO has Tech 2 air as well now. You can see in the course of this game is heading very rapidly in ZLO's favor. ThomasHiatt being forced to use his ACU to join in the naval fight. ACU's only with limited naval fighting capability. Can't really fire underwater unless they have to torpedo. They can only really shoot from the coast at their limited range. Now ZLO's navy growing by the minute. And ZLO is doing a very good job of preserving his units, while little by little shaving off ThomasHiatt's frigates and submarines. ZLO now working on Tech 2 Navy. You can see ZLO being very conservative with his mix upgrades, while ThomasHiatt looking very far into the future. See, he hasn't upgraded too many mixes since the beginning, but he still has more than ZLO, certainly. In terms of raw mass income, you can see that Thomas is a little ahead of ZLO, but he needs time. He needs time to use that mass. He needs time to accrue a navy. But the small mass income advantage doesn't look like it'll be enough to take Thomas over the top. ZLO with a small raid on this middle island here. Just labs, and relative to their purchasing power, or their cost, I should say, and doing a great deal of damage. A big skirmish over here. ZLO takes the lead. Or preserves his lead. Convincingly. Now, it looks like the end is near, as Thomas is scarcely even able to defend against labs dropped onto his shores. Well played by ZLO, now bringing the first destroyer into the fight. You can see that that won't even be necessary in the effort to take out Thomas's navy. Frigates swarming Thomas's naval shipyards. A limited number of subs from ThomasHiatt fighting valiantly, putting barely a dent in ZLO's frigate armada. Now the game has ended. As you can see, the game has stopped, indicating that Thomas has thrown in the towel. So well played by ZLO. A show of speed there by ZLO, quickly building naval factories, quickly scattering his forces throughout the seas, while Thomas was working on eco. ZLO grabbed every ounce of mass and energy could to produce that navy, and Thomas just was not able to catch up. I think Thomas expected more of an eco theme to this game, but it was not to happen. a little bit more scouting and perception by Thomas, he might have noticed that ZLO was working on a more rush-oriented strategy. Still, with that eco, Thomas was not able to overcome. Well played by ZLO, valiant effort by Thomas, and that gives ZLO a 7-3 lead against ThomasHiatt. One more game to go for ZLO to win the series, whereas Thomas will have to win 5 more games still. So let's move on to the next game and see what happens. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next cast.